It's still uploading. There it is. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 4, season 4, session 4. I'm not sure exactly what we're calling it, but our last of 4 in the month of July COVID financial series put on by Financial Staples and Worth Winning. So if you don't know, we have done 4 different episodes based on various things in the financial industry. So part 1 was 5 financial myths that everybody needs to know, understand, and do something different because they are in fact myths. The next week we did home ownership. I think that's out of order. We did home ownership first, right?
Yeah.
We did. But we talked all about what you should do before you become a homeowner. And then last week we talked. What did we talk last week? I have no idea what we talked about. Last week, investing? No.
Oh my God, what are we talking about?
This is bad.
Financial advisors.
How could we forget that? So, financial professionals. We talked all about financial professionals last week and, what to think about before hiring one, when it's appropriate to hire one. Yes, while we are both financial professionals, we've done 4 weeks of totally free information, data dump onto you all, not because we want more clients, but because we want to give more value to people. We want people to be organized financially. We want people to start making better decisions, and we want them to have the right information to be able to make better decisions. So we are closing out with the last, but certainly not least, in an area that people always make mistakes. Chloe and I see it far too frequently. And with her working specifically with women in tech, I think she probably sees it far more than I do working with stock options. So tonight we are talking all things stock options. Don't hesitate to drop notes in the comments if you have questions, comments, concerns. If you have stock options, we are happy to answer those as we go. And without further ado, Chloe, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 4th week and our final week. And my name is Chloe, and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a financial planning firm here, and I work with clients, nationwide, mostly people in their 30s and 40s that are tech employees and that have some form of stock compensation.
Yay! So if you have a friend that works at, a Salesforce, a Spotify, and Hulu, and Netflix, there's lots of companies that have stock options. You're gonna want to hit them up real quick, tell them jump on because they're gonna want to know how they may be messing up their stock options and how they can better optimize them. All right, well, let's get the party started. So for introductory purposes, I just want to tell everyone, this is blanket financial advice. When we get in kind of the stock option world, it's not, it's investment oriented, but this is not specific to you. So, stock compensation is very complex. We're just going to scratch the surface this evening. And that is why we highly recommend that anyone with stock compensation work with a financial planner, get a tax professional, because we're going to get to that later about the mistakes people make when they don't have a tax professional. But hire someone that can help you because you may be costing yourself money when you think that you have a really cool employer benefit that is making you money. So you need someone that's going to talk about your customized situation. So let's start tonight, Chloe, by just kind of talking about what is stock compensation?
Yeah, so a lot of people say stock options or, company stock or equity. And so there's a lot of different terms that people use, but really the umbrella is stock compensation. So it's a portion of your total compensation. So think about, like your salary that you get in cash, your bonuses that you get in cash. Some companies also offer their employees stock in the company as another form of compensation. So it's something that's included in your total compensation package, just along with your employee benefits and, 401k matches and all those different things. But it's really a total part of your compensation, and you should think about it that way.
And compensation is good. It's an exciting thing. You want to be fairly compensated. And I think one mistake that people make is, they want to see cash dollars in their paycheck. And when they hear about employer stock options, because they don't understand it, they don't think there's a benefit. They're like, well, why would I want, $60,000 plus, $60,000 of stock compensation? That's $120K of a benefit. you're just like, I'd rather make 120K. And while that, that's understandable because we know and we can feel the money coming home, you got to really look at, what are all the benefits behind the scenes. And it's not even just stock compensation in that regard, health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance. A lot of the clients that come to me are interested in jumping ship and becoming entrepreneurs, and they don't realize like there's a lot of things that are included with your nice stable every 2-week job that you're going to have to figure out on your own if you jump off into the ledge of entrepreneurship. So just understanding employer benefits in general is an important part, and understanding that this compensation is in fact compensation that can really help you build wealth.
Yeah, and it's something that's become increasingly more common. Like back in the day, you would only think about these top level executives or C-level executives that would get this equity in their companies. But now with all these tech companies, you can be a regular contributing employee and receive stock at any level.
Yeah, now more than ever, it's becoming a really common way to retain employees. So, traditionally it was like that thing, like you said, it was only for big timers, but I work with clients pretty much exclusively in their 20s and 30s. And probably maybe 50% of my clients that are not athletes have stock compensation. And it's not just, like you said, big tech companies. There are some smaller companies where you're being compensated in some way. So it can be just as lucrative as the other things that are offered via your compensation package, and it can definitely help you achieve your financial goals. So
yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the different types of stock compensation. So maybe RSUs first. I feel like that's pretty much the most common, right?
Yeah. So when we talk about stock compensation or any kind of just company stock, there's a couple of categories. The first one is restricted stock, and then the second one is stock options. So as far as restricted stock units or RSUs, you might have heard, or for people that work at Google, they're GSUs. But it's basically your company's promise to give you shares of stock when certain conditions are met. And the most common condition there is time. So the company might say, we're going to give you $1,000 or 1,000 shares of stock, but you have to stay with the company for 4 years in order to get it. So you get, a quarter each year. So that's one of the most common things that we see.
Yeah, I want to bring up a term that people use frequently too, as you talk about kind of time, is vesting. So it's used not only as it pertains to stock options, it's also used sometimes in 401k plans, where, like you said, by staying around for a longer period of time, you get access to something. You get rewarded for, not just jumping ship after a year or two, bouncing around to a different firm, but, by staying 4 years, as Chloe said as an example, you get a reward of, this additional compensation at that time. And it's also kind of referred to, that people refer to the golden handcuffs. So not specifically this, but this is part of the golden handcuffs, if you will, things that make you want to stay around because, leaving is going to be far less advantageous than staying. So little things like that definitely matter. All right. So with RSUs, what's the thing with using them? How hard is it to actually get the money when you have RSUs?
Yeah, so like I said, it's really your company's promise to give you the shares as soon as you meet the conditions, which the most common condition is time. So basically, once that time condition is met, then the shares are no longer restricted, and you own them outright. So at that point, you can choose to keep them, you can choose to sell them, and so that's kind of where people maybe don't understand exactly how they work, but once that restriction is lifted, then you own the shares, and it's just like you bought the shares yourself.
They are what they are. So if your company is doing well, then your shares are great. If your company's not doing well, then it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so pretty short, straight to the point. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments. We're happy to go a little bit further. Like I said, we're trying to keep it high level, not to bore you to death, but to give you enough information to kind of know where to look out. Maybe that's a good question, actually, is like, what are the common pitfalls with RSUs? Are there any things that, people kind of screw up as it pertains to getting these and having them available to them?
Yeah, I think the most common thing is just not understanding what they are or how they work. So people just, they don't do anything about them. They just let them sit there and accumulate, and so it's just, people, if people understood more about how they work and how they could be used to help you achieve financial goals, then maybe there would be some more decisions being made instead of just having it just sit there. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. I think we should probably talk ESPPs next because I feel like they're like the next most common thing. Like ISOs and NQSOs we'll get to, but I feel like ESPPs are relatively common as it pertains to, the people that I'm serving. So what in fact is an ESPP, Chloe?
Yeah, so an ESPP is an employee stock purchase plan. And so a lot of companies have these, even if they don't give you stock compensation, sometimes they have this as an opportunity. But it's really just an opportunity for you to buy stock, shares of stock in your company at a discount. So the discount can be anywhere up to 15%. So what you do is you decide how much you want to buy, and they deduct that money from your paycheck over a 6-month period. And then after that 6 months, they use all that money that you contributed over 6 months to buy shares of stock at basically at 15% off.
Yay! Who doesn't love a discount? You like shopping and getting a discount. Now you got discount on the stock. So why not purchase the stock when it automatically comes at a discount?
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any drawbacks to buying this stock at this 15% discount?
No, I mean it's great. It's free money, just similar to when you think about the 401k match. We always say please contribute up to the match, but I mean you have an opportunity to get this at a 15% discount. So I mean that's a great opportunity.
So when you buy them 6 months later at a 16%, 15% discount, do you usually hold on to them? Do you sell them immediately? Like what?
Yeah, so that's another thing. Similar to RSUs, people usually don't understand how things work or what decisions they need to make. But it's a similar decision that you have to make with RSUs. So once the stock is purchased, you own that stock, so you can keep it, you can sell it, but that there's a decision about if you should sell it and how much you should sell, and so those are the two things that you have to think about when you.
I feel like this is a good place to pause and talk about kind of the biases that exist sometimes. So I work at company X and it's such a great company, and everybody, Spotify is a pretty big company that's pretty popular right now. So if someone works at Spotify, they might say like, gosh, this company is doing really great. I'm watching the stock go up. I plan on working here forever. I'm just going to own all the Spotify stock. I'm never going to sell it because I don't, I just feel like this, I'm buying it at this cheap price, like you said, a 15% discount, and it's going to go to $1 million. Someone's definitely going to, make this stock go to $1 million. What is the problem with owning pretty much only your company stock and not maybe diversifying away whenever you get all the different kinds of options that are available to you?
Yeah, and another good example of that is Amazon, because everybody who works at Amazon, they think they're invincible.
They're like, I'm gonna be a millionaire for sure. I just gotta keep these. I'm good.
Exactly, but yeah, really the biggest thing is there's a huge risk that comes with owning a lot of shares of company stock, and so generally speaking, we don't recommend that anyone hold too much in a single stock, too much of their portfolio. So, just think about if you have company stock and you have other investments like your 401k or brokerage accounts, think about what percentage that company stock represents. And if it's more than 5 to 10%, then that's very, very risky. Like you're putting all your eggs into one basket. And not only that, but you're also putting all your eggs into one basket, and those eggs are from the company that pays your paycheck. So think about the worst case scenarios, like the Enron example. There were employees. If you remember Enron, if you're too young, look it up. But there were employees who worked at this company, and they were so optimistic. They thought this company's just going to continue to grow and grow, and they had a lot of their worth tied up into the stock. And what happened was the company went under. The stock lost value, and they lost a job. Right. So, I mean, that's a worst case scenario.
So they had all this potential compensation that was available to them, And yeah, they were never able to liquidate it. So that's, one thing that we talk about too is like liquidity, having cash on hand. But it's all tied up in this particular investment and all your eggs are in that basket. That basket burns up. Your eggs are boiled.
Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, and another thing too is just think about what goals you want to achieve. Like this is having company stock is a great way to achieve so many financial goals. I have clients who want to buy their first home, or they want to pay off their student loans, or there's just so many goals that people might have, and this stock that you receive can be used as an opportunity to make some of those things happen.
Yeah. And I think too, just like the idea of diversity overall, we talk about diversity in life, diversity in company culture, actual diversity. It's not different. The more different the people in the room are, the better the room is. The more different your basket of stocks, the better your portfolio is. Like,
yeah,
it's a blanket term, but diversity is diversity, and diversity makes things better. So you don't want to have, just like you said, this one thing, and you're kind of gambling when you do. You hit the slot machine, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna win, and then what happens when you lose? We know gambling is a problem for a lot of people for a reason. They go broke more than they go rich. I would go rich, get rich. So yeah, make sure you diversify across all the different things that exist. You don't want to just be in this one thing.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, don't get us wrong. I mean, concentration is something that builds wealth. It's if you have a lot of a company stock and that company does continue to grow over time, that's how a lot of people have built wealth. I mean, I live in Atlanta, and I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Clients whose grandparents bought Coca-Cola stock or Home Depot stock back in the day, and they held on to it, and they have millions of dollars right now.
Right.
But that comes with a lot of risk. So you just have to be willing to understand that risk and willing to take that risk. Otherwise, and once you have the wealth, you want to protect it. So you don't want to continue to take the risk. I always say, if you won the game, stop playing. And I've seen clients go through, IPOs, and if you have a big life-changing amount of money, do you want to continue to take that risk, or do you want to take some chips off the table?
Right. Yeah, hit the bank button and put some of it aside so you're good no matter what, and then continue to play with the rest of it. Yeah. I think that's the most ideal scenario, is when you have enough funds to, okay, I'm going to have a reasonable retirement no matter what. And if if this goes the way I want it to, I'm going to have a balling, awesome, like buy a yacht retirement instead.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some of the common mistakes that people bump into as it pertains to stock options. So hit us with some things that you've run into with your clients, people that maybe became your clients because they realized they made a mistake.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to what I said earlier, just not having an understanding of how these things work. I mean, one of the biggest misunderstandings is just the taxes. It can get, we're not going to get into specifics, but it can get very complicated. The way these restricted stock units and the employee stock purchase plans, the way they work from a tax perspective. And so if you don't understand how the taxes work, sometimes you could make a big decision that could lead to paying, more taxes than necessary. So that's a big mistake that people make. If they do have a plan or want to sell the stock, not understanding, if they sell it, what does that mean from a tax perspective?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the first thing. And then also from a tax perspective, especially with employee stock purchase plans and RSUs, when you do sell the stock, you receive what's called a 1099. And so that's what's used to file your taxes. But sometimes those documents can be incorrect. And so if you elected to withhold some shares to pay some of the taxes, or just the way the transactions work, sometimes your information might not be correct, and you end up paying more taxes than necessary. So I mean, I recently heard about someone who found out that the tax documents weren't right, and they went back and amended several tax returns and got $8,000 back.
Yes. That was actually my first client that I dealt with as it pertains to stock options. And I looked at their return and I was like, this is not right. I'm not sure exactly what's wrong from the accounting standpoint, but we have enough knowledge and expertise as financial planners to know like this is not okay. I actually had to go back and amend returns, and it ended up being like 7,500 for them.
Mhm.
But it's a lot of money that you miss out on. And what was happening? They were self-preparing.
Yeah.
So self-preparing, don't know, not paying a whole lot of attention. That's something that a financial professional could have caught. You know, luckily, like they came on board and I actually caught it. And I said, well, let's go back a little bit and see, you know, how long have you been doing this for? So
Yeah.
another thing that I
And
see.
even, I mean, I'll say too, even with tax professionals, you know, not every tax professional deals with stock compensation on a regular basis. So, you know, find someone who, you know, they have several clients who have company stock, and they, you know, they prepare those tax returns because they know what, you know, what to look for. They know the right questions to ask you so they can prepare your tax return correctly.
Yes. And so while we're here, CPAs and enrolled agents, we do not want people who are not properly educated in the area of taxes and especially in stock options to be preparing our returns. So not only do you want to ask if they have that expertise, you want to ask if they have that accreditation, certification, licensure, however you want to refer to it. But we want people who have had significant education in the area of tax preparation, not just went online and filed for a tax preparer's number, which pretty much anybody can do. So
Yeah. Yeah, and another mistake that I see is just, you know, not understanding, like not reading the company document. So whenever you receive, if you receive, you know, RSUs, then you're going to get a document from the company, and usually you have to sign to accept the shares. But yeah, that document's going to explain, you know, how they work, you know, how they're taxed. It's going to explain what happens if you leave the company, what happens if you get, you know, become disabled, you know, there's, or, you know, if you get fired. There's so many things that you have to think about. And so, you know, people don't understand that. They might leave a company and they're leaving money on the table because we talked about the vesting requirement. So if, you know, if you have to stay there for 4 years to get all the shares and you leave after 2 years, you're leaving that money on the table. And if you don't realize how much you're leaving on the table, you don't factor that into negotiating at the second company that you're going to.
nailed it. I feel like that is a great, yeah, that's a great thing to bring up. It's like, oh, I'm tired of this job. They're gonna pay me $10,000 more, and before you know it, you gave up $40,000 by leaving a job for, you know, $10,000 more, and you thought you were making more, but you weren't actually making more. So definitely important to understand what you have and then weigh what your the current situation versus where you're headed next, especially if you're not unhappy in your work. You know, like I said, don't look at just the dollar signs, look at the total compensation that is available via whatever employer you're thinking about switching to.
Yeah, if you're going to lose something at, you know, at your current place, then make sure you negotiate that, get a signing bonus to make up for it, or get, you know, additional stock. And another thing I see too, you know, just to talk about negotiating a little bit is, like Lauren, you said earlier, some people think, oh, well, I'm going to get a smaller salary and more stock. Like I'm not sure about that, but, you know, I mean, that could be very beneficial. It just, you know, you just have to kind of weigh, you know, what makes sense. And if you have multiple offers, you might have one with a higher salary and, you know, less stock, or one with lower salary and more stock. But, you know, you really should think about these things from a total compensation package, or as a total compensation package, and think about, you know, how that affects you personally.
Yeah, those are really good points. I feel like two other things that I bump into kind of frequently with mistakes is, you know, not exercising them at all. Or, you know, they expire. So, you know, they go from like, this is a really good opportunity to now you didn't take advantage of the opportunity and you missed it altogether. So that's why it's important, like you said, to read whatever document you get when you're signing up for something to understand how it works. If you are not going to take the time, or if you know you're not financially inclined to really know and understand this stuff, gives you anxiety and makes you very overwhelmed, and you're just like, I'm gonna stick my head in the sand and just not do anything. Financial professional, you need somebody who's going to be watching this for you, who's going to read that boring document for you, so they know, like, hey, in August, like, it's going to be time, the window's going to be open, and we need to do blah blah blah. Here's what, you know, let's jump on a call and get that done. But the other thing too is putting a zero cost basis on their tax return. So we were talking about taxes a minute ago. So basis is like, what is this thing worth? That, like, what's the baseline? Because above and beyond that is what you're taxed on. So if you put there's no basis, and then you're taxed on everything, whereas some of it might have actually been, what you were granted originally, and instead of paying taxes on this amount, you're paying taxes on this full amount. So generally, people put zero because they're just like, I don't know, nothing. Like I don't know what basis is, and they just say it's worth $44, and they put that on the line. But if you actually got it at 20 and it's gone to 44, this might be where the tax liability is, not the whole 0 to 44. So mistakes that we see frequently.
Yeah, and that goes back to the, sometimes the documents aren't, accurate. The 1099 that you receive might not have the correct cost basis on it.
Right.
So yeah, you have to pay attention to those things.
All right. Well, let's talk. What shall we talk next?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, going back to the concentration piece, I think some of it's psychological. People just really do think they're overly optimistic about their companies, and they think, my company's going to continue to go up, and the stock's going to continue to go up. My company's doing great. Long term, it's everything's going to be great. But you really do. I'll say everybody says that about their company. like everybody. It doesn't matter where you work. It doesn't matter what's going on. But everybody is optimistic about their company. So take a step back and really think about it from an objective perspective and say, how much risk am I taking on?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point, is deep breath, hold on 1 second. What am I doing? All right, now let's make a decision, versus like, this is what I'm doing. Or, even like I said, not dealing with it and just doing it without thinking it through. I think that's with all financial decisions, is really thinking about, what am I trying to accomplish here? What are my goals? What are my values? And what's the best way to get there? And hitting the pause button just to sit and do that is a really important aspect of just getting wealth and starting to maintain wealth and then to grow your wealth.
Yeah, because money is an emotional thing, and we make a lot of emotional decisions around money. And so if you have a clear understanding of what your goals are, what your values are up front, what you're trying to accomplish long term, then you can look through that lens when you're making decisions, and really, take that time to step back and think about it.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is, like, what about the companies that are not public? So I know there are some smaller companies that are offering stock compensation, and a lot of people feel like, if they have an IPO, I'm going to get rich. I just can't wait. I know that this is my ticket. What do you say about the companies that are smaller and, maybe haven't IPO'd yet and don't have options that you can actually do something with at the moment?
Yeah. So, well, let's take a step back and explain like options real quick, because I know we haven't talked about that. But basically, stock options are the right to buy shares of a company stock at a fixed price over a certain amount of time. So generally speaking, as an example, you might have the right to buy shares of your company stock at $20 a share, and you have 10 years in order to buy those shares. But they're also subject to vesting, just like restricted stock units. So you have to wait until you've stayed with the company for a certain amount of time before you can actually buy those shares. And so what happens is, let's say the company's stock, over that time appreciates to $50 a share. So you're buying it for $20 when the market price, if you just went and bought it, on the stock exchange, would be 50. So you're getting, a little built-in discount there as well. But the stock can also go down, and then your options aren't worth anything. So you take on a little bit more risk with stock options than you do with restricted stock units, where they're just handing you the shares.
And so, yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought us back there, because I had totally forgot about ISOs and NQSOs. So first of all, ISOs, incentive stock options. So you may have access to those. You may not know that you have access to them. Make sure that if you see those, that's kind of what we're talking about right now. And then,
NQSOs, are non-qualified stock options. And the difference between those is basically the tax treatment, like the simplest way to say it.
Yeah. The biggest difference is the tax treatment. So just make sure that that those are the things that exist. And if you've seen those somewhere, or in your employer benefits package, or you didn't look it over very closely, those are two really good options as well, from a stock perspective. So
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to the, if you work for a private company, you can either get stock options or restricted stock units. It depends on, generally speaking, like the stage of the company. So if you get into a startup, on the ground floor, you're one of the key, few employees at the very beginning. You might get some options there. But usually when they're late stage and they're getting ready for an IPO, or they're close to an IPO, then that's usually where you see the restricted stock units. So just to explain how that works, basically, if you have any kind of stock compensation in a private company, those shares can't be bought by anyone on the stock exchange. So that's what we mean by a private company. And when it goes public, or if you hear IPO, that means that at that point, when it goes public, that anybody can buy the shares on the stock exchange. So before the company goes public, it's not really like a marketable stock. It doesn't really have a lot of value, just because you can't really openly buy and sell it. So that's just to explain a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, I think an important point to bring up, like you were mentioning about being early stage in the company, in order to kind of get rich, if you will, on the IPO, that, and you mentioned also, like, you probably get RSUs as it gets closer. It's because, like you said, lower basis. That's what I was describing. So, like, you started early in the company and the stocks were worth $1, and then you're getting ready to go IPO and they're gonna, be sold on the market at $100. Well, that's a pretty big difference. Whereas if you're kind of newer to the company and you hear about the IPO, then you're getting the RSUs, you're getting them at whatever the cost is. So there's not the get richness of it. Once it goes IPO, it may go up significantly from kind of where you are if you want to hold on to them. But you're not getting the $1, you're getting the $100 thing the same as everybody else, but as a form of compensation.
Yeah, and when you hear about these, overnight millionaires, or people who instantly get rich when the company goes public, it usually is, someone who's early stage, employee, or somebody who worked, at the company when they were early on, and that doesn't come without risk. A lot of, when we're talking about salary negotiations, a lot of times, people might go work for a startup and they take less salary and get more stock, because the company, they're just starting out, like they can't afford to pay you this big salary that Google can or Amazon can. So they might, give you a smaller salary and more stock, but you could potentially benefit from that stock long term, and it could be a life-changing amount if you get with a company on the ground floor.
Yeah, those are the people that are eating oodles and noodles. They have a roommate, but they believe in their company and they show up with their, chutzpah and their skills every day, and then the company grows and like you said, they get to eat because they were there when the company was doing not much, and they believed in the company and put their kind of sweat equity into the company as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it can always go wrong too. I mean, it's not a guaranteed home run. I mean, I've recently just heard about someone who worked at a startup, and the startup stopped paying them. They couldn't afford to pay anymore, and so they had to. They thought they had a job and things were good, and they basically, a startup went kaput. So that happens. I know other companies. I mean, there's a couple of private companies here in Atlanta, and they have no intention of ever going public. They want to stay company owned.
So what happens in a situation like that? If you have stock options, are you able to liquidate them within the company when it doesn't go public? Like, what are your options if they offer you some stock options or stock in the company, but it's not a public company?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the company I'm thinking about now, like, they actually don't offer shares to the employees for that reason. So the owner and the founders are the ones who are the only people that own the shares.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen some companies. I have clients who work at public companies, and I mean, I see the headlines, and basically the founders are like, we don't want to go public, or we're not going public anytime soon. And there could be situations where if you have those stock options, there is that 10-year window typically that you have to exercise those stock options or buy that stock. And that window could expire before the company goes public. So it's, I mean, who knows what'll happen? Sometimes the company might, make it right. Sometimes you just lose opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think another thing to bring up here is like when you leave the company before it goes public. So generally, what I've seen with clients is that, if a company is not yet gone public, you can either keep your options and, like you said, cross your fingers, hope, wish, and pray that one day they do. Or, they'll if the company is liquid, you can, inquire with the HR department or whomever, and they'll say like, you have up to 90 days from the time that you finished at your work until, to make a decision, and we'll buy you out at X price. So you want to always ask, like when was the company last valuated? Like what was the last valuation, to get a good idea of, what this might be if you're choosing to take the, I'm gone and I got 90 days to make a decision. Maybe you just want to cash out now and not wait for an IPO that may never be coming, especially when you're no longer attached to that firm, and not putting your sweat equity in to know that whether or not it's going to succeed. You don't have any real understanding of what's going to happen there.
Yeah, and that's another decision that people have to make when you think about options. You have to think about when to exercise, or or when to buy the stock when we say exercise. How much to exercise, and then when to sell the shares. So those are like the three decisions that you have to think about with options. Whereas, like I said, with restricted stock or ESPPs, it's just when to sell. So, when you're at a private company, when you buy that stock, like you have to take money out of your pocket to buy the stock, and that's a big decision to figure out. How much risk can you afford to take? Like if how much are you okay losing if the company never goes public, or if it's not successful? Is that a risk that you're willing to take? And then what does that look like in terms of your total financial picture? So there's a lot of decisions that you have to make and things that you have to think about.
What are some of the things, like you said, you mentioned home ownership, what was it, like maybe car purchase, debt repayment? Are there any other things that you think of, like as it pertains to, like you said, people are kind of getting their stock options, cashing them out, and using them for other aspects of their financial life? Have you seen kind of like what with your clients?
Yeah, the most common are paying down debt and buying a home. And even if the client already has a home, it could be making renovations or fixing up the home, or just other big purchases like that are important to the client. But I mean, if you don't have any of those short-term things that are important to you, the other thing is just to save it for retirement. It is a part of your total compensation, and just like you should be saving a portion, or a percentage of your income, like that's part of your total income. So you should be setting that money aside for long term. And once you sell the stock, diversify, invest it in a diversified portfolio so that you can have that money grow for when you need it down the road.
Yeah, tonight's myth is stock options are free money. They are not free money. They are negotiated compensation that is available to you, and you should plan accordingly for this compensation in the same way that you plan accordingly for your paycheck. When I think about like the ways people, like I said, they kind of just in their mind, it doesn't exist. I get my paycheck every 2 weeks, so then when I get this big lump sum, I can YOLO with it. You definitely don't. And I think you brought up a really good point about like, putting that money into retirement. Maybe your compensation is not such that you can max out your retirement account every year right now. 19,500 is typically what's available to people to put into a Roth 401k, a 401k, a 403b, something like that. And so if you can't do that on a regular basis, and now you have this compensation available to you that would allow you to kind of maybe bump that up so that you can, use that money instead as your, spending money, that's a good way to be thinking about like, how can I get enough money set aside? Because one day all of us are not going to be able to work. It's just a fact of life. It is what it is. We're also all going to kick the bucket, which is sad, but we want to prepare as much as possible to live a really good life. At the point we either choose to not work anymore, or at the point in which we cannot work anymore. And I'll tell like kind of a personal story to add to this. Like my grandmother passed away yesterday, And,
Yeah.
we're now like, and Chloe and I actually talked about this a while back, like the GoFundMe pages that exist. We're not creating one, it's not that bad, but my grandmother didn't have anything. And if there's nothing that I can encourage people to do more, is like to stop and think about, what's being left behind for others. And even if it's not that you want to leave something behind, let's say you're a single person, you're like, I don't care, I'm just gonna spend it all. I hope I die and I got $0.00, you know, um, get some counseling. But either way, like it's still a situation where what about the people who care for you who are going to have to bury you, whether it's cremation or whatever. You want to have something set aside for your future. So I know it seems like I'm going off on a tangent, but the point is that we need to be planning all the time with everything that we have so that we can make decisions that are going to positively impact our future, because we're living in the now, but there's a lot of things coming around the corner that we can't see. And to be better prepared for what's around the corner, and just properly prepared. There's like I said, not only does she not have anything and we're going to have to come up as a family for burial costs, but every day I'm working with clients who are receiving inheritances from their grandparents, because clients are generally my age, which means their parents are now hitting retirement age and their grandparents are either passing away or near death's door, if you will. So grandparents and sometimes even parents are passing away at this point. And in the brown community, I'm not seeing a lot of people that are having anything passed down. So not only is nothing left behind, but like I said, Papa was a Rolling Stone. The only thing, only thing he died, the only thing he left us was alone. Like, it's the same thing. If you're having to dip into your pocket to cover someone's afterlife expenses versus inheriting 100,000 or 1,000,000 or whatever the case may be, what things can we do right now while we feel like we're invincible, while we're in great health, to make sure that we're planning for our future? And these stock options can be used to do just that. So
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. I mean, while we're on this tangent, that's one of the things that I see. Just generally speaking, we know there's a huge wealth gap. There's a huge racial wealth gap, and I've seen more clients, in tech who make really, really good salaries, who receive, hundreds of thousands of dollars of stock compensation, and they have an opportunity to make a huge difference, and not only in their lives but for future generations. And if you take it as an opportunity, then you really can build wealth. You can find ways to set yourself up for success, and also your children or your grandchildren. Yeah, and that's one of the things too. I mean,
go ahead.
But yeah, I think it's it's just something that people should think about. Is just really, if you do have this opportunity to make a good salary in any job, or if you have an opportunity to get stock in your company, and you have good compensation, don't blow that opportunity. Don't just spend everything you make every time you get a big raise. Don't continue to spend even more every time you get more stock. It's just fun money or free money. It really is an opportunity that a lot of our parents didn't have. Our grandparents certainly didn't have.
Mm-hmm. For sure. We do not want to pilfer away the opportunities that we are being given now, because there are new opportunities coming our direction. All right, so let's wrap it up with some takeaways. What do you have for us, Chloe, as things that we can think of as it pertains to takeaways?
Yeah, the first thing is, like we've said so many times, just think about stock compensation as a part of your total compensation package. So, look at when you're comparing job offers, or if you're looking at an offer letter that you receive, look at your base salary, look at any cash bonuses that you get, and look at the stock, look at all of your benefits, and think about that as a total package. And use that as a basis for making a decision about whether or not you want to take the job. And then also, these things can be so complicated. There's a lot of tax rules. We didn't get into taxes because it would be a little too much for this live.
3 hours at least.
Right. But there's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of complexities. There's a lot of taxes to think about, a lot of decisions that you have to make, and those decisions aren't going to be the same for everybody. So really, if you have stock compensation, it's in your best interest to get some professional help. Primarily with a tax professional, and then also with a financial advisor as well.
Yeah. And just to kind of bring that point home, the difference between tax professional and financial professional, because a lot of people don't know, is financial professional is going to look at all aspects of your finances. The tax professional is just going to look at your taxes. So many people know that they got to pay Uncle Sam, and they're just like, I need an accountant. I need an accountant quick. Yes, you do need an accountant, but someone that's going to be kind of the trainer and overlooking and overseeing everything, the person who's going to help you, talk about your student loans and talk about that home purchase and help you understand how to set money aside for your kids' future or their education, or like you said, we just talked about passing away. That's where the financial planner comes into play. Is like, let's look at your full financial picture and make some decisions, about what's best for, these stock options based on all the things you're trying to accomplish. Accountant is not going to help you with that.
Yeah, and sometimes too, I think tax professionals they look at what happened in the past, and not all tax professionals will help you plan ahead for the future. So having that combination will really ensure that you're looking at your entire picture and you're also thinking about the future.
Yeah, I think we killed it tonight. I feel like we're early. We got 15 whole minutes left.
Yeah.
We covered it. Oh, I know. I put some resources, so you might have just seen me drop links in there. 2 options that would be really good resources if you're interested in becoming more educated on your stock options, because we are not against you educating yourself. While we do want people to hire financial professionals, and not just financial professionals, but us, like me and Chloe are thebomb.com. We want you to be more educated. And that's why, like I said, we did this series, we did these set of sessions, and there's no harm, no foul at all in looking into this information, using good old fashioned Google. And be careful on Google, because not everything that is on Google is true. I know we all think it is, but it's not. So Consider Your Options by Kaye. Is that Kaye? I'm not wrong.
Oh yeah.
It might actually just be K. Actually, I think I might be being too fancy. Kaye is K. By Kay Thomas is one option. And then the Wealthfront blog, where with a guide to equity and IPOs, is another really good option. So please do.
Yeah, they have some great articles on that blog about stock compensation.
Awesome. Well, if no one has other questions, comments, or concerns, Chloe, do you have anything to wrap us up?
Oh no, I mean it's been a pleasure, just spending the last 4 weeks with you guys, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I hope you all learned a lot of things. If you haven't checked out our first 3 episodes, please go back and check those out. Like Lauren said, the first week was about home ownership. The second week we busted a lot of common money myths, I think 5 total, and talked about a lot of different topics there. And then last week we talked about financial professionals. So if you're in the market for one or think you might need help, we talked about just different stages that you're in and where you can get help at every stage. So we really enjoyed this, and we hope you got a lot of value out of it. And yeah, so stay tuned.
Yes, and I just want to say that while Chloe and I have committed to doing this, check those boxes. We are both very much introverts. And this was a labor of love, truly, because we are tired of seeing people not getting access to the right information. So, we hope to continue to do more marketing type things, but it's not really our style. Like, word is traveling via mouth because people think we're awesome. We do a really good job. We love to be behind the scenes or talking one-on-one with our clients. So we really hope that you found value in this, because we stepped out of our comfort zone to be able to do it. So.
Yeah, we were both kicking and screaming the whole time.
But we made it, and we're better for it.
And it was really fun.
All right, without further ado, we will see you all somewhere sometime soon. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll drop our links to our websites in the chat as well. And yeah, happy 2020. Let's make the second half better than the first half.
Definitely. Bye. Good night.